I have had my share of Zoom mishaps, trust me. And I'm only hoping my internet holds up tonight. So,
Okay.
um, okay. Now I have to put my money where my mouth is and actually share my screen. Do you have any announcements or anything before we start? Okay, I'll take that as a no.
I apologize. What was that, Anne?
Oh, I just wanted to make sure you didn't have any announcements or anything before we
Oh,
start.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead, and I'll go get everything at the end. Go for it.
Oh, okie doke. Okay,
I don't want to
I'm
hold
going
you
to
up.
first share a screen that is going to look like a screen I don't want to share. And then I'll share my actual slides, which will be on that screen. So are you seeing a colorful background? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. When I do share my screen, I probably won't be able to see most of you. So, so once I start, if you have any questions, please speak up and let me know. But before I get started, I just wanted to thank you all for being here tonight. I know I've met many of you either in person or on Zoom in past meetings. So along with my team, we just wanted to give an update on the psychosocial impacts and navigating care transitions on caregivers to people with SCI, a project that you've heard about before. But before I really dive in, I wanted to let you know that three of the team members are actually here with us tonight. So Susan Hinsey is a associate professor of sociology at Case Western Reserve University. She can go ahead and wave, there you go. And she's been on meetings in the past. And Brian Gran, who is professor of sociology at Case Western Reserve as well. And I have spoken with Jacob Schuler about giving some consulting time for this project as well, and I believe he's on the meeting tonight. But we haven't really engaged deeply yet, so I think this will be good for all. So with that, now I will actually try to share my screen. Actually, I'm going to start PowerPoint. Bear with me. It's been a while since I've taught anything on Zoom, so I'm a little rusty with this. Okay. Hopefully you're seeing my slides and not my notes. Okay, great. So as I mentioned, we're here for a project update tonight, and we're really pretty excited about this project. You've heard about it before. We've been investigating the impacts of what it takes to navigate care after spinal cord injury, not just for people with spinal cord injury, but also the people, who support people with spinal cord injury. So our goals for tonight are to give you just a quick reminder and overview of the project, review some things from the past. That way, if you're not familiar with the project, you'll know where we're coming from. Have a brief update on our current enrollment and demographics. And then the more exciting part, I think, is to share with you how far we've gotten with developing a website to help people navigate things after spinal cord injury. So again, this is a project that was funded by the Craig H. Nielsen Foundation. They are an amazingly generous foundation that was founded by Craig H. Nielsen, who he himself experienced a spinal cord injury and has that lived experience. This is our project team, as I mentioned. Brian and Sue are here tonight. Kim Anderson also consults on this project, as well as Daniel Lopez. And we took what we call in research world a mixed methodology approach to the project. And what that really means is we did qualitative interviews with people to understand experiences after spinal cord injury, but we also had some surveys thrown in, and that's not a part of the project that we'll be talking about tonight, but just to kind of give you some background. So in research, we have what are called specific aims. So the funding agencies want to know like what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And that terminology is, specific aim, but really it's a goal. So our goal was to investigate experiences encountered by the caregivers or support people to people with spinal cord injury as they negotiate transitions in care. This was born from previous work that we've done specifically investigating the experiences of people with spinal cord over the course of a year, spinal cord injury. And one of the outcomes of that project was realizing how much support people had taken on while their loved one was kind of recovering and getting stronger and doing rehab and kind of getting back at it. So we have interviewed 15 people with spinal cord injury and their identified support people or caregivers. We did interviews at the time of acute inpatient rehabilitation, so pretty early after injury, then again at 6 months, and then at 12 months after injury. Don't read all of this. This is, again, a researchy slide that I was just using to pace me. But the second part, or the third part of the project, you'll notice that I went from specific aim 1 to specific aim 3. The reason is we're not going to talk about specific aim 2 tonight in this audience. We'll probably do that at a later date. But specific aim 3 relates just to developing the website. So we decided that people needed an online guide or a clearinghouse of sorts of information after spinal cord injury. But more importantly, they don't just need to know the resources, they kind of need to know even the questions to ask after spinal cord injury. That's feedback that I've gotten from a lot of individuals over time, some of whom are on this meeting. So we'll dive a little bit more deeply into that in a few minutes. Here we go. So just a quick update on enrollment. With any kind of research project, especially something that spans over the course of a year, it's sometimes inevitable that you lose people's participation for a number of reasons. So we actually started with 16 individuals with that. PWS is people with spinal cord injury, SP is support person. And so we had 16 pairs. But early on, one support person withdrew even before the first interview, just because of scheduling problems and other demands in life. By 6 months, we had 4 more support people withdraw for these reasons that you can see below. And by 12 months, we had 2 additional support people withdraw. And I do believe that had a lot to do with these support people being busy after the spinal cord injury happens to a family. But that said, in all, we still do have really pretty good enrollment, and we have data from everybody up until the point where somebody withdrew. So that continues to inform the work that we're putting together with the website, and I'll show you how. Just a little bit about those groups, though. So out of the individuals who we started with, the relationships between the support person and the person with spinal cord injury are shown here. So we had 7 support people who were parents of someone with a spinal cord injury, 6 who are a spouse or a committed partner, 1 grandparent, and 1 cousin. The mean age of the support people was 52 years, but you can see we have a pretty good range from 26 to 78 years. The support people were largely female, and we had 3 male support people, and most were employed at the time of their loved one's injury. 4 were retired. So that just gives you an idea of the folks we were interviewing. So a little bit about the online guide development. So this is an overview of what we have decided to do. So first of all, we need to come up with a name for this website. And we have one in mind. I'll share that with you in a moment, because that's one of the first pieces of information that we'd like your feedback on. And then we decided to create a Google-based website. So currently, none of us on the team are actually website designers or experts in developing websites. So we are using a pretty easy format through Google that allows us to at least get things started. And I have a partner over at the Cleveland FES Center, Deidre Rexseidler, who's helping put the nuts and bolts of the website together. So, but leaving it easy enough so that we can make changes in real time as we're developing. And then the development process is really, it goes a little deeper than you might expect. So how it works when we are putting this website together is we do interviews with all of the support people. we record all of those interviews. And then when we get the recordings back of those interviews, we actually transcribe them. So the interview becomes words on a transcript, just like you would read like, a transcript for anything that was recorded. So that actually becomes data. So words are data in this case. So we go through hundreds and hundreds of pages of words from the conversations that we kind of co-created between the interviewers and, the people we were interviewing. And we do a process that's called coding. So coding means that we read through the transcripts, and Sue and Brian, if you want to add things too at any point, just don't let me run away, talk like a runaway train. But we look at all of the codes and we come up with ideas about what people are really saying. So every line, I think almost in every transcript, is coded some way or another. And an example of a code might be insurance, for example. So if support people are talking about how they're negotiating with an insurance company on behalf of their, loved one with spinal cord injury, we might code that insurance. Or if they have a question, we might code like, oh, this is a question. So then we take all of those codes and we look at those specifically and try to see if there are themes that are coming out of those codes. Does that make sense? So one theme that might come out of the insurance code, for example, could be frustration, let's say, if someone, wasn't getting what they needed to from insurance. Or in some cases, they might be pretty happy with their insurance and happy with the services it provides. So that's just kind of a high-level overview of what we did to get the data. And what we would do as a team is we would get together weekly and discuss the codes and the themes that are emerging, and really discuss and sometimes debate back and forth about what we think is really going on. And then the whole idea for developing this website is to take all of that information and link it to different stages post-injury. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that we have ideas of different things that people have expressed that they need at different times after their loved one's injury. So the needs immediately after injury are a little bit different from when their loved one gets to acute rehab, and then a little bit different, even more so when they leave rehab and go either home or sometimes to a skilled nursing facility, that sort of thing. So we're trying to build a website that is based on these transitions that people might experience as they're, going through their injury. I'm going to stop for any questions really quick. And I'm not seeing any, so I'll keep going. So right now we are thinking about the term North Star for our website. North Star being kind of a guiding, navigating, point that we can refer to. So we're calling it North Star Navigating Life After Spinal Cord Injury. We're going to use the domain northstarsci.org, hopefully. I think it's still available, but I need to register it. But we've put together this mock website that I'm going to show you some real examples of in a little bit. It will change a lot because right now it's in the very early stages. So think about that name for a little bit, because I might ask for your feedback toward the end if you're willing to give it. Okay, so to give you an idea of how we are building this website, the idea is that we want the website to be evidence-based. So that's a researchy term, again, because we're researchers. And what we really mean when we want something to be evidence-based is we want it to be developed by the people who are experiencing spinal cord injury to help people who are experiencing spinal cord injury, whether it's themselves or, their loved one, whatever it may be. So we're not the experts. We make observations, we make the recordings, we see the patterns, but we're not developing the content. So everything in the website that is in there currently has come directly from our data, directly from something one of our participants has said or expressed a need for. So going back to this process of finding our evidence or finding your stories, right? We had identified several codes at the beginning, you can see here. So, and again, codes are when we go through the transcripts and we see things that come up that people talk about. So here are some examples of the codes that we really dove into out of our hundreds and hundreds of pages of transcripts. Questions is one of them. Anytime somebody had a question about something or expressed not knowing about something or needing to find out about something, we coded it. And then we pull all of that information together and we see, oh, wow, here's questions about insurance, questions about home modifications, questions about Social Security disability income, for example, that kind of thing. Another code that we looked at is transitions. So anytime somebody made a change in their status, so they may have gone from their acute care after the injury to rehab, or maybe they went from rehab to a skilled nursing facility. So any kind of transition there was in their care. Anytime that there was discussion around decision making. So what somebody had to make a decision about whether it was choosing a skilled nursing facility or choosing a rehab center even. We had a specific question in our interview guide that we asked people at a certain point in time, I believe it was at 6 months, what would help you the most? So people would share like, oh, whatever it might be, I really need to know how transportation is going to work for, getting my, husband to and from therapy, things like that. We had a code about eligibility for government services or other government benefits. So again, maybe Medicaid or different things like that. We already talked a little bit about insurance and financial codes. We also asked people what they needed for the next steps. So that's also an indicator of where people are like having gaps in information. We asked participants to provide advice to other caregivers. That was in our final interview with them. So what advice would you give to another caregiver or support person to somebody with a spinal cord injury? And then we also have a code called info from the research team, because inevitably, when people did have questions, we're not going to withhold information. So we would find ourselves, in a situation where we might know an answer to a question, providing that information to people. So by coding that in the transcripts and we pull it up, it gives us a little reminder of, again, what questions people asked and then what did we tell them? And we want to make sure that that stuff is going in the guide. Sound good? Okay. Okay, so this is an example of the welcome page, and I'm going to read it to you because I know it's kind of wordy, but really it should give you a flavor of what we're trying to do. This website is intended to help families and individuals navigate the difficult terrain after spinal cord injury. The first few years can be challenging for both the person with SCI and their support person. There may be transitions in medical and rehabilitative care that involve navigating different kinds of institutions and resources. As a support person, you play a central role by taking on the tasks of finding resources to help your loved one recover and get back to their roles in the community. While your loved one is focusing on physical rehabilitation and emotional recovery, you may be left wondering how you can help. You may be spending long hours on the phone or searching the internet or both to find information about recovery and care. At times, you may be overwhelmed with information, yet seek answers to the questions you don't even know you have. This website is designed to navigate you through the questions to ask during the stages of recovery after SCI, as well as to the resources that will answer those questions. So that's where we're trying to go here. During our interviews and our conversations with people in this project in particular, but it mirrors a lot of information that we've learned from people in other projects, including my dissertation work several years ago now, and a project that Sue and Brian and I also collaborate with Kim Anderson, who you know, on her Recovery Perspectives project. But here's an example of some of the things that people have told us. You know, I'm glad we've had this conversation, meaning the interview, because I do feel a tad more focused because we've been brainstorming. This has been huge. You've really gotten me talking about things that I haven't talked about with anyone else. And then someone else had indicated that the biggest thing I would like to see is just the resources. It's very difficult if you don't have a team of individuals that have been around situations like this. It's easy to say, well, you know, you've got the World Wide Web, go search something. But, you know, just searching something isn't enough sometimes. And then here are just a few quotes that kind of relate to knowing what questions to ask. So someone had indicated, I wouldn't even know what was missing. I mean, it's all uncharted territory for us. I mean, I don't know enough to know that something's missing. Another person regarding Social Security disability income said, yeah, I suppose I just have to ask them. And I'm sure, I mean, I'm not sure, but I would assume that if I asked her, meaning the social worker, she would probably help. But someone in my situation is not necessarily thinking about that. And then someone else had stated this. I guess notifying them of the organizations that can help is kind of what she wanted. And as soon as the dust settles, I should have been applying for the SSI and the SSI disability before we left. Meaning, you know, made a transfer back home because her loved one had been injured in another state. So with that in mind, this is another part of the website, which again is still all very drafty. We have a lot of work to do. So again, the content in the site is developed not only for support persons and people with SCI, it's developed by these interested parties. And this kind of talks about how we spent 3 years and numerous conversations to identify the questions, just kind of letting people know that this is coming from the need that we saw in doing this study. And I guess the final thing is there's a ton of great resources out there available. Scott Fedor, who I've talked with a number of years, I think he's on this meeting, you know, has always said we kind of need a clearinghouse of information. I think we are not out to make, you know, a ton of new content. We're out to help people find the content, to ask the questions, point them to a few places, you know, be able to understand what is going to be involved in the next stage, and looking ahead to anticipate questions, and then, you know, by default, kind of have an idea of what resources you need to be looking for. So we won't be linking every single resource that we know for every topic in spinal cord injury. We're going to work together as a team and kind of collect ones that we know to be good and true and reliable, and then go from there. Okay. So here's an example of some of the content that we've started putting together. And when I say content, you know, again, pulling directly from the interviews, Sue, Brian, and I have a shared Google document that we are populating pretty constantly with information as we go through the different codes and interviews. And so far, we have, you know, at least 8 different categories of content under the time period of what you need to know immediately after spinal cord injury. There's probably going to be 16 more topics, or, you know, we're still going through all of the data and adding to it. So it will continue to grow. But some of the topics include things like how to choose an inpatient rehab facility. And people have to make those decisions quick, right? So if we can have a resource that can help people understand right away, that would be great. Importantly, I know this isn't really a medical website, but prevention of secondary conditions. We've had situations where people have gotten into trouble with their skin while they're either in the ICU or in acute care. And then, so knowing that, you know, spinal cord injury puts you at risk for, skin issues or urinary tract, all of those different secondary conditions is valuable information for people to have early on. How medical and social insurance works. And what do I mean by social insurance? I mean things like Medicaid, home and community-based waiver services. So the programs that will help provide someone with attendant care out in the community, or, transportation, different things like that, in addition to just medical care. Some information on what people have done to find financial resources for the short term. We have a whole other section that Brian has put together that has, longer term things to think about financially and potential opportunities to help. Caregiver support resources, huge. There are a lot of things out there, almost as many as there are for, people with spinal cord injury directly, for peer support resources. The importance of making those peer connections, mental health, work options, and employer benefits. So these are all things that kind of emerged in our early interviews with people. But you can see just by looking at some of the topics, they really they can span, your whole time post injury. They'll be important during rehab and then later. So we have another set of topics that we've included in what to know during rehabilitation. So things like how to get equipment and home modifications done. Maybe someone can't go back home, and so they're looking for accessible housing options. One thing that I don't think a lot of people learn about early on after injury is certified independent living centers, and that's a thing, and that they're a really great resource. An example in town is LEAP, linking employment abilities and potential. Great resource. Other Social Security and government resources, how to choose a skilled nursing facility, because, in reality, a lot of people have to have that step before getting home. Understanding how your length of stay is determined after, spinal cord. How long can you stay in rehab? And am I drawing on my screen? Must have done something. Home health and things like what to expect when you get home. Again, these are really just an overview of what we have found so far. They're by no means comprehensive, but we're hoping to get there. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. Can you guys see that yellow squiggle? I didn't hear.
Yes,
Okay.
I can.
I can too.
Okay, I'm a nervous fidgeter, so I must have gotten this pencil activated somehow. So I wonder how I can erase that.
I think it needs one more eye.
Whoops, hang on. Okay. It needs one more what?
Eye. Looks like a smile with one eyeball.
Okay. Oh boy. Well, let's see if we can do that. Oh, there's an eraser. Okay, well, if it doesn't bother you too much, I don't want to sidetrack us because
It's cute.
I do want to find I want to get your feedback. So real quick, I think I will actually, this will stop it. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. And I don't know, Sue or Brian, if you have any things to point out while I'm transitioning.
Been a terrible audience. Good night.
Okay, so let's stop. Now would be a good time if someone had a question. And I apologize, I had a screen open and it's not open any
I'll
longer.
be interested in seeing what the employment opportunities are for a paraplegic.
So I think, yeah, I think that's going to be tricky, for sure. But yeah, a lot of times vocational rehab folks are critical there, but I think quite often they're not even really brought up with people, in rehab. I don't know if some of you have had other experiences.
It was definitely a theme that came up with some folks. I mean, you're trying to figure out so many things at once about how to move forward. And yeah, where to find resources if you're ready to go back to work, whatever modifications you might need. And it did seem a little bit like for some folks, it was almost luck, like that they worked for a company that was willing to make the modifications for them or something like that. But I think that's definitely a need that a lot of people have, and maybe we can dig around a little bit, and Brian, and make sure that we find some of those links that would be useful for people.
Yep, actually, I'm just jotting that down too, because that is our goal today, is to get feedback from you all. And I know we're early-ish in this, so I imagine we'll be coming back with, another more of a finished project, as we move on.
I know opportunities for high ones with disabilities.
OOD is a good one, huh?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So here is kind of our homepage, North Star: Navigating Life After Spinal Cord Injury, empowering individuals with SCI and the people who support them. And this is really, as most things, like the about page. And I kind of already read this, goal to you. So this is sort of a launch page. One thing that and then of course, more detailed about the pictures will be updated. We're really just building the content first with words. But one thing that came up is what people need to know, like spinal cord injury, what it is and what you need to know for the best care. So you all kind of have been, through the situation where you're given a lot of information early on, and some of it sinks in, some of it takes longer, some of it, like, your providers may give you information, but you might want more. So one of the things we really wanted to do is give people kind of just a basic spinal cord injury 101. And again, I'm not going to write, a paper on, the different levels of spinal cord injury or anything, but I am going to link to some resources here. So we actually really like these resources, something from the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. So the idea is you click the link, it takes you there, and you can find out more. The Paralysis Resource Center for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation is a really excellent resource as well, as is the United Spinal Injury Association's What is Spinal Cord Injury? So really good resources. And, one of the things we really want to point out is, spinal cord injury, as you know, can be a pretty complex condition. And it's also a condition that happens to fewer people compared to things like stroke or, cardiovascular disease. So it's hard to find SCI specialized care. So knowing from the get-go that you really need to find resources that include that, provide information about spinal cord injury or can treat, some of these, secondary conditions is really important. So again, linking again to the United Spinal Association Resource Center, that will take you to a link with things like, how to choose a rehab facility, et cetera. And then just kind of giving a breakdown what typically happens after someone experiences an SCI. If we can get information like this into, the hands of probably the support people at that stage, while their loved one might be in intensive care, it's informative, kind of knowing that, oh, the next step is we need to be looking for a rehab center, for example. Let me go back up to the top. Here's the immediately after injury page. So, what are some of the things, that you're interested in looking for? So finding rehabilitation facilities. We're going to have panels for each one of these things and have people click through. I guess, just jumping back to the timeline after spinal cord injury, we're also working on sort of like, you've seen those subway stop kind of, pictures, like think when you're taking a subway and you have different stops along the road, and that 3 stops from now you're going to be getting off at West 25th Street or whatever it is. We want to do the same kind of thing about what happens after spinal cord injury. But anyway, so this is what to know immediately after injury, and then our rehabilitation page. So someone can come and find out resources for equipment and home modifications, accessible housing options, certified independent living centers, information on how to choose a skilled nursing facility or long-term acute care hospital if that's needed. And then community resources, which we haven't built that one out quite yet. So the structure probably of this website will change a little bit as we're building content, because, we want it to be kind of interesting to people, and we want, people to be able to find what they need. So just don't pay a whole lot of attention to the structure. It will hopefully be a really sharp looking website when we get it all together. So I think that is about it for the website. But can I ask you right now, first of all, for any feedback that you might have with the name North Star?
It doesn't say anything about having a spinal cord injury or paralysis.
Well, I think, let me go back. I think we're going to actually call it North Star Navigating Life After Spinal Cord Injury. And then I think then up here we would put North Star SCI. Does that help?
Say again?
If we call it North Star SCI, and
That
here
would be
on
helpful.
our front page is Navigating Life After Spinal Cord Injury.
Yeah, that would definitely help, because everyone with a SCI knows what SCI means.
Yeah, that's true. North Star is, we know it's used for a lot of things. There's even, I think, companies called North Star. So that's a really good point, is to make sure we kind of forefront the SCI part.
Absolutely.
Does anybody else have feedback about North Star Spinal Cord Injury or SCI?
It would also kind of be nice if you had a different font. The
Okay.
North Star part having a
Got
the
it.
more design to it, and the other one a little bit plainer.
Okay.
2 fonts maximum.
Yeah. One thing too about North Star is that since a lot of like what people have to do after spinal cord injury is kind of like connecting the dots and trying to find resources, is we can maybe use constellations as a theme within our website as well, as we kind of advance the development of it. So it's good to get feedback on this. Okay.
It can't hurt, I guess.
So one other thing that you probably noticed too is this project was, I'm sorry.
I just thought, as you have special things you want to note on different pages, have an icon, maybe your North Star icon. That would be like, there's something that's read that for sure.
Okay. Like a take home point and kind of identify it with a North Star.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great. And I'm wondering if we can maybe use the constellation idea to help with our pathway somehow. One thing that, as we're writing this, Sue and Brian and I, the project was funded really to investigate the experiences of support people, but obviously we've also been interviewing people with spinal cord injury. So we're kind of going back and forth about who's our audience, right? Who are we writing this to? Because that will change how, I think a lot of what I read to you was really geared toward the support person. But it's not lost on us that, there are a lot of people out there who are managing their own navigational things themselves immediately after injury. So I wonder if you have any feedback about that.
I have a little thing. It won't hurt. Definitely both are going to be reading it. And if you're speaking to both, it will not hurt either
Yeah.
to have it for both of them.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So that's going to take some, luckily we have some folks who are good at writing and editing that will help us along the way. And also maybe then obviously having like links that are specific, maybe only to support people or only to the people with SCI.
Yeah, you could even have a little icon or something, support person icon, SCI icon. I don't know.
I like that.
I do too. That's great. Thank you. Yeah. The other thing about this website is, since it is kind of a clearinghouse of some resources, we're probably going to have a lot of updating of links. And so I just wondered if anybody had feedback about how we might go about that. Obviously, one thought was maybe to have a report mechanism within the site. So if someone does click on a link and it comes up with that dreaded 404 link not found.
Error.
Because we know that happens more often than we'd like it to.
It's a good idea. They know there's an updated. I didn't know you could do that. Cool.
You didn't know that you could do what?
That you would have a note there saying, or that it's been updated, so they don't get lost and forget it.
Yeah. I think it's going to take some pretty consistent attention for us to go in and test them. And actually, that might be something that we could assign to, various of us in the research realm have students that we can rely on and assign things to. So, and that would be a good way for them to learn as well.
Or open it up to the whole community, people that are reading the information. Join us if you have any information we should put here, or if something's better than what we have, let us know. You might get a lot of feedback you don't want to.
You know what? That's okay though. I mean, I'd prefer to have more feedback, and that's a great idea because we're picking certain resources, but we're going to have people, give test runs of the website too. And that's another thing that if anybody on this call is interested in participating in that, that would be fantastic. But yeah, it would be great if this was kind of a crowdsourced kind of website, right? So one thing that we've been working on recently is the section about choosing a skilled nursing facility, because that is a thing for quite a few folks that we've spoken to. And wanting to know your opinion about, is it important to differentiate terminology of skilled nursing facility compared to nursing home? Do you all know the difference? Do you want to know the difference?
I've been in five different ones, and from my experience, all nursing homes have a the physical therapy department in it, and it's usually in a certain wing.
Mhm.
That's what I know about that.
Okay. Yep. I think how I most understand it is that the skilled nursing facilities, people do go to get more rehab, like you said, physical therapy, occupational therapy. I think the term nursing home is used when it's more just for residential care.
Yeah.
And not getting therapy.
Yes, so sometimes they do get therapy, but they definitely put the people with the most therapy in the same wing. So it's easy for the therapist to get to them. And they're close to the therapy department.
So would you then, like, if you were newer then to your injury, would you find some information like that helpful on our website?
Yeah, something that was more, a place that was more devoted to therapy, or that was a larger focus, would definitely be an attraction and good information to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I think, we're developing a list of questions too to ask when looking for a skilled nursing facility. I don't know with your experience how you ended up choosing yours.
I didn't choose, I chose it by location, because if you call and ask the person that's in charge of giving you information, they're selling their product. They want you to come there, and they're going to tell you anything that they
Right.
can to get you to come, and it's not always the truth.
Hmm.
Talking with people at the facility is the best way. If you're allowed, like, get a walkthrough, and hopefully don't let them pick the day and time. Just like say, I'm gonna come in, sometime this day or something, and let me walk around where I want to. If that's cool with you, they can go with you, and you
Yep.
can go ask people residents questions.
Mhm.
And during like lunch times and meal times, everyone's congregated in one place.
Mhm.
That's a good time. And then people will see you talk. People will see you and they're talking, and they'll know that that's a place they can go talk to someone. Like, oh my God, they're going to kill me. This kind of thing, or this is a really nice place. I think that's a good thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good. And I think one of the suggestions that our team came up with was even asking to sample the food. Doing things like that and asking specific questions maybe of the therapists about their experience with, working with people with spinal cord injury.
Yeah, therapists are a whole section of their own. They're looked up to by everyone at the nursing home. This therapist kind of can run what they want to do. It's from my experience.
Mhm.
They get pretty cocky about it too.
Oh, boy.
And therapy departments, oh my God, there's a big difference. Some are they're just there to give that person 20 minutes. Like they used to give me TheraBand exercises.
Mhm.
Simple, dumb, just silly ones I do on my own. And like I would want to stretch it a different way and do a different no, we have to do it this way. I'm like, that's okay for a 75-year-old, but this is whatever. Some therapy departments are really lame. And others, oh my God. And so many do not have spinal cord injury experience.
Yeah.
It's like, and they'll act like they do, and they'll say they do, but then you
Oh.
find out they don't. Ask them stuff like, do you do transfers? Do you have a car available to teach people how to transfer into? It's an amazing resource. I never had that,
Yeah.
except at Old Brooklyn, and I had a stupid bed sore on my coccyx, and I couldn't transfer because I was at the trauma center at UH for 5 weeks, and they don't turn you in those places. They do not turn you in those urgent care stuff. You
Mhm.
really need to tell families to do it, to watch
That
out.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. Brian and Sue and I, we, have heard from a couple people early on that they really need to be proactive and get their loved one turned and even like put a whiteboard up and times and everything. And it's definitely a tricky thing.
If somebody has a trach, give them one of those boards you can write on and rub it off with.
Mhm.
Because of a new trachs, I couldn't talk for weeks. And that was a godsend when someone thought to give me one of those.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I'm talking so much.
No, it's great. I think we're at about 8 o'clock now, but I did want to just kind of ask if anybody had other comments to share about where we're at. Because we're really just going to be, our goal is to kind of have a good pilot website to have people look at this summer. Hopefully before the car event that you guys are having. I think I saw on the schedule that that's coming up this summer.
Can everyone hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording.